Story number 1. The Disappearing Evidence. I've never told anyone the full story, not really. They would have said it was the wine, or that I was dreaming, or making it up for attention, as if a middle-aged teacher in a logging town has time to chase UFOs for fun. It happened on a Tuesday night in October. I remember because the wind was up and the leaves were blowing wild against the windows. I was grading papers on the couch. TV was humming, some late night quiz show in the background. Then the lights flickered, twice, and then the sound cut out. Total silence. I stood up, thinking the power had gone, but the light from the lamp was still there, dim and strange, not yellow, but almost bluish, like the colour of snow under the moonlight. That's when I noticed the window glowing, not just the curtains, the actual glass, lit up from the outside. I stepped out onto the porch and looked up. There it was, a triangle, hanging silently over the trees at the edge of my property. No noise, not even the wind anymore. 3 white lights pulsed at the corners, and in the centre, a red circle spun slowly, almost lazily. It wasn't huge, maybe the size of a house, but it hovered maybe 40 feet up, dead still. I just stood there, mouth open, barefoot on the porch, head thudding like I knew something I didn't. Then everything went black. When I came to, I was lying in the living room floor, still holding a red pen, one shoe off. The clock on the wall said 2:17 a.m. I had gone out there around 9. I'd lost 5 hours. I chalked it up to a fainting spell, or maybe I dozed off. But then came the dreams. I started having the same one every night, me floating in a vast metallic room. No walls, just silver light. I couldn't move, I couldn't scream. Tall figures stood around me. Not human, thin, long arms, giant dark eyes that didn't blink. They didn't speak, but I knew what they were thinking. You're not supposed to be here yet. On the 3rd morning after the sighting, I went to check the yard where I'd seen the thing. I don't know what I expected, but I sure didn't expect what I found. 3 perfect circles were burned into the grass, each one about 6 feet across. Nothing else touched. The soil was baked dry beneath them, like it had been microwaved. I took pictures. I even got some Polaroids, just in case. I went back inside and called the local newspaper. I left a message. They never called back. 2 days later, they came. It was a Saturday afternoon. Quiet. I was sipping coffee and doing crosswords in the kitchen. Then 3 knocks. Heavy and slow. 2 men stood on my porch. Both wore black suits and black fedoras. Not a stitch of colour on them. One was tall and stiff with skin that looked too smooth. The other was shorter with an odd way of smiling. Like he'd been told what smiling looked like but had never done it himself. "Good afternoon, Miss May," the tall one said. "We'd like to speak to you about the event you may or may not have witnessed." They never introduced themselves, no badges, no credentials, just the suits and that cold politeness. I didn't invite them in, but they walked past me anyway. The tall one asked questions in a flat, robotic tone, not about what I saw, but about what I remembered, exacting phrases, colours, shapes, sounds. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. Were their eyes more almond or elliptical? I hadn't told anyone about the dream, not one word. My voice cracked when I asked who they were. The shorter one just smiled wider and said, "We're with the department that handles such things." I asked, "What department?" "Classified," the tall one said. They left as suddenly as they came. No car in the driveway, no footsteps on the gravel, just gone. That night I went to get the negatives and Polaroids from the kitchen drawer. All gone. The camera too. No sign of forced entry. The door was locked. I called the sheriff. He came out and took notes and said he'd look into it. When I called a week later to follow up, I was told there was no report filed, no record of my call. Things got weirder after that. For the next 2 months my phone would ring just once at random hours. I'd answer and there'd be silence. Then a faint click, like someone hanging up or listening in. My mailbox was opened several times, the flag raised but nothing inside. I stopped sleeping, stopped going out at night. One evening I walked into my bedroom and froze. My window, normally locked, was open. On the windowsill sat one Polaroid. The photo showed my backyard, the burned circle in clear detail. But across it someone had drawn a big black X in permanent marker. On the back, in tiny neat letters, were the words, "You saw nothing. There is nothing to remember." I burned the photo in the sink. After that, the phone stopped ringing. The mailbox stayed shut. No more dreams. But I've never shaken that feeling that they're still watching. From the woods, from the sky, from behind blank, unblinking eyes. So no, I don't talk about it. Not to the neighbours, not to the kids at school, not even to my sister anymore. I grade my papers, drink my coffee, and I don't look up at the night sky, because I know what's up there. And I know they don't like it when we remember. Story number 2. The motel room visitor. You spend enough nights on the road and you start to see weird stuff. Deer that stare at you. Too long. People walking highways in the middle of nowhere. Lights where there shouldn't be lights. But nothing ever shook me like what happened that night in Arizona. I was heading east on I-40, maybe 50 miles past Kingman. Then I saw the thing. I pulled off onto the side road to get a few hours sleep. I remember the time exactly. 11:34 p.m. I only remember because I just clicked off my CB and checked my wristwatch. Then the cab lit up like daylight. No sound, no engine, just this glowing saucer about 100 feet off the ground, maybe 20 feet across, hovering above the desert like it was stuck there. It moved with me when I stepped out, glided almost, like it was watching. I raised my hand, dumb, I know, but I didn't know what else to do. It pulsed, once, twice, then zipped off like a shot towards the horizon, gone in a blink. That was it. No lost time. No aliens climbing out. Just me, the stars, and an empty sky that suddenly felt a lot bigger than it had an hour before. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The next night I stopped at a motel inside Winslow, a dusty little place, nothing fancy, but it had a working lock and hot water. I was brushing my teeth when I heard it. 3 knocks, slow and heavy. Sounded more like someone pushing on the door than knocking. I figured it was a manager, so I opened it without thinking. Big mistake. The guy standing there was off, right from the start. He was wearing a black suit, like full-on church funeral type, in the desert, at night, no dust on him, a black fedora, black shoes, not even a wrinkle on his lapel. His skin was pale, but not just pale, it looked artificial, like wax, like someone had stretched fake skin over a mannequin part. No facial hair, no eyebrows, just these dark eyes and a tight, unmoving mouth. He looked at me, then glanced around the room like he was double-checking something. "You are Mr. Morales?" Not a question, a statement. Yeah, I said. "You witnessed an aerial anomaly last night." I didn't know what to say. "I might have? Who are you?" He smiled, but only with his mouth. His eyes never moved. Your cooperation is appreciated. Discussion of what you think you saw is inadvisable. Then he paused, tilted his head slightly, like he was studying me. His lips barely moved, but he said, "You will forget, or we will come back. Next time, you will not remember us either." And then he just turned and walked away. I watched him go, but here's the weirdest part. He never walked past the window. I was waiting to see him cross the parking lot, but he never showed up in the glass. I opened the door again, looked out. Nothing. No car, no footsteps. I barely slept that night, kept the light on, door bolted, chair wedged under the knob. The next morning, things got worse. I went out to my truck. Everything looked normal until I climbed into the cab and saw the dash cam was missing. Not torn out, just gone. The wiring was untouched. The mount was still there, but the camera and the microcassette inside had vanished. I went to the motel front desk to ask if anyone had come into my room the night before. The clerk looked at me like I was nuts. "Saw you come in alone." Nobody came up after. I'd have seen it. I asked if they had security cameras. He laughed. "You think this place can afford cameras?" I left that morning and kept moving, but for the next few days weird things kept happening. I'd wake up and my stuff would be slightly moved. Not stolen, just wrong. My toothbrush in the wrong pocket. My clothes folded weirdly. One time I found my duffel bag re-zipped from the inside. And always I'd get this feeling before it happened, like something electric in the air. My scalp would tingle, my fillings would ache. I started to wonder if I'd actually been abducted, if maybe the lights in the sky were at the end of it. Maybe they were just the start. A week later it happened again. Different motel, different state, same 3 knocks. I didn't open the door this time. I didn't even move. He spoke through it. "You were warned." Then, silence. I counted to 60. Opened the door. Nothing. Since then I've stopped sleeping in motels. I sleep in the truck now. Cab locked. Camera hidden. I don't talk about the sighting to anyone except people like you. Folks who believe in this stuff. Everyone else thinks I'm nuts. I probably would too, if it hadn't happened to me. But I know what I saw, and I know that guy, that thing, was not from any government agency. He wasn't even human. I don't think he ever was. So if you ever see lights in the sky and think, "Wow, cool, aliens," just remember, it's not the craft you need to be afraid of. It's what comes after. Story number 3, The Vanishing. You don't expect something life-changing to happen on a fishing trip. You expect beer, maybe a few laughs, and if you're lucky, a good story about catching a 5-pound trout that was this close to getting away. But what I got that night, it wasn't the kind of story you can tell at parties. I was 23, still living at home with my parents in a small town off the coast. Me and a couple of friends had gone camping near a lake about an hour north. Way off the beaten path, just a fire, a cooler of moosehead, and a couple of tents. The sky was weird that night. You could see the stars sharp and clear, like they were pushing in closer than usual. No moon, just a thick silence, the kind that feels like it's holding its breath. That's when we saw the light. It wasn't a plane, no blinking, no sound, just a bright white orb, moving low and fast across the water. It stopped over the lake, hovered, then it flashed, like a camera going off in your face, and vanished. The next thing I knew I was waking up in my tent, sunlight hitting my eyes, head pounding. I looked at my watch. 10:22 a.m. I had no memory of crawling into the tent, neither did my friends. One of them, Mike, was weirdly quiet all morning. The other, Jared, kept saying he had a nightmare about drowning in the sky. Not falling, drowning. When I got home that afternoon, I noticed something strange in the bathroom mirror. A small red mark behind my left ear, like a pinprick. It didn't hurt, but it itched like hell. That night I had dreams, metallic rooms, beings without faces, a humming sound that shook to my bones. I woke up with my sheets soaked in sweat. The next few days I tried to tell myself it was just a trick of the light, that we all got too drunk, that the dreams didn't mean anything. Then he showed up. I was home alone, sitting at the kitchen table, writing out a letter to move on. Yeah, I'd gotten that obsessed. I had a stack of notes, sketches of what I'd seen, and a page from my journal. There was a knock at the door. Not the front one, the side door, the one nobody used. I opened it slowly. The man standing there was tall, like too tall, 6'5" at least, rail thin, wearing a black suit and an old-fashioned 1950s movie fedora, black tie, even black gloves. The creepiest part? His skin was greyish, like wax paper left out in the sun. He spoke without moving his lips much. "You are Thomas. You have witnessed something." I stared at him. Heart was jackhammering. Who are you?" "That is not important," he said. "You will cease your inquiries. You will destroy all written material. Your experience is not to be remembered." And then he smiled. God, that smile. Too wide, too still, like a doll's mouth drawn on with a marker. I backed away, slammed the door, locked it. I ran to the window, just a few seconds later, to see where he'd gone. Nothing. No one on the lawn, no footsteps, no car, just an empty street. I even stepped outside, looked around. I swear it was like he'd vanished into thin air. There weren't even tyre tracks in the dirt where a car might have parked. Later that night I decided to take a photo through my bedroom blinds. Paranoia, I guess. I figured if he came back, I'd catch him in the act. The photo developed the next day. I remember standing there in the dark room, watching the image come into view. Empty street, my house, the trees, but no man, no shadow, no car. But here's the thing that chilled me. In the bottom right corner of the image, barely visible in the grain, was what looked like a smudge. Not a camera flaw, no, this was deliberate. A dark, vague shape, like a person mid-step, but distorted, warped, like something caught in a glitch. I still have that photo. I kept seeing him for weeks after, out of the corner of my eye, across the street at 3 a.m, standing at the edge of the woods near the lake, always at a distance, always when no one else was around. I started sleepwalking, woke up in the backyard once, barefoot, shivering, staring at the trees. Another time I found myself standing in the kitchen, holding a glass of water, but I don't remember pouring. I burned my notes, tore up the sketches. I even wrote a fake retraction letter to move on, claiming I made it all up. That seemed to help. The sightings stopped. The dreams faded. Until last year. I was at a thrift shop, flipping through old books, and found one called Visitors from Beyond. On the inside cover was a black and white photo of a man in a suit, standing near a rural fence. It was him. Same waxy skin, same hat, same too wide smile. Someone had scrawled a note in the margin. They don't vanish, they wait. I dropped the book and walked out without buying anything. So yeah, laugh if you want, call it a hoax, I don't care. but if you ever see something strange in the sky and you start remembering things you maybe shouldn't, drawings, dreams, flashes of light, do yourself a favour. Do not talk about it. And if a tall man in a black suit knocks at your door, don't open it. Story 4. The Restaurant Encounter. I'd never been into UFOs. I liked X-Files, sure, but only because I had a crush on Mulder. Aliens weren't something I thought about until I saw one, or saw something. It was late April. I'd just moved into a new apartment outside Hackettstown. Quiet area, kind of rural. I was driving home from visiting my sister, taking a back road through some farmland because Waze wasn't a thing yet, and I liked the peaceful route. That's when it happened. The sky turned a strange shade of green, almost like the air itself had tinted. Then a flash lit up the field beside me. I hit the brakes. Right there, not 50 feet off the road, a craft was hovering over a cornfield. Oval, matte grey, completely silent. It had rows of lights that pulsed in a rhythm that made my vision go fuzzy, like it was syncing to my brainwaves or something. Then it was gone. No sound, no blur, just gone. Next thing I knew, I was in my car, parked in front of a diner downtown. The clock on my dash said 11:52 p.m. Problem was, I should have arrived home by 10:15. I lost over an hour, no idea how. I didn't remember driving into town, didn't remember parking. Inside the diner, I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the coffee. I kept thinking, did I have a seizure? Did I fall asleep at the wheel? But I'd felt awake, alert, and the thing I'd seen, that wasn't a dream. Then he walked in. The bell above the door jingled. I looked up. A man in black suit and hat stepped into the diner. Everything about him screamed off. His skin was waxy, pale, with a faint greenish tint under the lights. His smile was wrong, too symmetrical. His eyes never blinked, not once. He moved slowly like he was studying the room, then sat across from me in my booth. Never asked, just slid in like he'd been invited. You experienced an anomaly, he said, like he was reading from a script. You will no longer pursue memory recovery. What? I stammered. Who are you? His head tilted. Do you not recall this conversation already? I froze, because I didn't, but something about the question twisted my gut. Like maybe we had spoken? Maybe more than once? But if we had, I had no memory of it. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. He smiled wider. Good, that's how it should remain. Then he leaned forward slightly and added, You are the kind who wants to remember. That's dangerous. He stood, walked to the counter, and this still makes my skin crawl. He picked up a spoon from the cutlery bin and bent it with his thumb like it was paper, set it down, nodded to the waitress, and left. No car, no sound, he just vanished into the night. I stared at that spoon for 20 minutes. It was twisted into a loop like taffy. I asked the waitress if she saw him. Tall guy, black suit, never blinked. She looked confused. You've been alone in here the whole time, sweetie. But he sat right there, I pointed. Nope, she said, almost too casually. The booth's been empty. I looked around. No one else seemed to have noticed him. It was like he'd never existed. But the spoon was still sitting there, bent into a near-perfect spiral. That night I couldn't sleep. My head buzzed like 1,000 mosquitoes were trapped behind my eyes. I started getting flashes, bright lights, cold metal, voices in a language that didn't sound human. I couldn't tell if they were memories or dreams. I went to a hypnotherapist. She tried regression. I started screaming during the session. My heart rate skyrocketed. I broke out in hives, and I have no memory of what I said, only that afterwards she asked me, "Do you want to continue this? Because something in you really doesn't." I said no. I stopped, but that didn't stop them. I began noticing people following me, always in pairs, always wearing black. One of them, a woman, had eyebrows that looked like they'd been drawn on with charcoal. Her lips didn't move when she talked. I started losing things. My notebooks, my tape recorder. I even recorded a message to myself one night, convinced I'd lose the memory again. I woke up to find the cassette tape, unspooled and shredded, right inside the player. The buttons were still warm. I moved a few months later, changed numbers, changed jobs, tried to live a quieter life, and mostly I've been left alone. Except sometimes I'll be walking down the street or sitting in a cafe, and I feel it, that sensation of being watched, like something sitting just outside my field of vision. And then there'll be a man, or a woman, or something in between, wearing black, not blinking, holding a cup of coffee they never drink, looking too still, and I know I'm still on their radar. I just act like I don't notice anymore. I don't ask questions. I don't go looking for answers, because I've learned the hard way. They don't want us to forget. They just don't want us to understand. Story number 5. The Airport Encounter. I've always been a rational guy, logical. I work in IT. I'm good at math. And I've never believed in ghosts, aliens, any of that. But I believe now, because of what happened after that flight to Nevada. It was a work trip, conference in Las Vegas, standard 3-day teach thing. Nothing weird, except the flight in. That's when it all started. We were descending into McCarran Airport when the turbulence got rough, real rough. But it wasn't weather, it wasn't wind, it was light. This flash, like something exploded beside the plane, lit up an entire cabin for half a second. Everyone gasped. Even the pilot came on, clearly rattled, saying he had no visual explanation and that we may have encountered an atmospheric lensing event. The second I stepped off the plane, my head felt wrong. Heavy, like my thoughts weren't sitting right. I chalked it up to jet lag and went about the conference, but the dreams started that night. Bright rooms, cold metal, a low frequency hum, and shapes, humanoid, but off. No eyes, long arms, standing over me. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart racing, ears ringing. The morning after the second dream, I noticed something, a small triangle-shaped bruise, just below my collarbone. Perfect geometry, not something I could have accidentally caused. That's when I started recording myself sleeping, audio only on my phone. The third night there was something on the recording, static, then a low voice, mechanical, monotone, whispering a word I couldn't understand. Something like Zalatha, then silence, then metal scraping. I tried to show the audio to my co-workers the next day, but the file was gone, erased. The folder still existed, but it was empty. No backup, nothing in the cloud. My flight back was delayed, so I was stuck at the airport for hours, sitting at the terminal, headphones in, trying to act normal while my skin felt like it was buzzing. That's when they appeared. 2 of them, dressed like FBI agents from a TV show, black suits, black ties, pale white shirts, no name tags, but something was wrong. They didn't walk, they just floated enough to seem off, like their shoes barely touched the ground. Their faces were too smooth. One of them had no visible pores. The other blinked once, and I swear his eyelids moved sideways. They came straight toward me through the terminal, not rushed, not slow, just inevitable. I stood up, backed away. "Mr. Lane," one of them said without any emotion, "you are exhibiting signs of contamination." "Contamination?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Your memory is unstable," said the other. "This poses a threat to contaminant protocols." "What the hell are you talking about? Are you with Homeland Security or something?" "Homeland is irrelevant," the first one said. "You will follow us now." "Nope." I turned and moved fast, through the crowd, past the pret-a-manger, toward the restroom corridor. I didn't stop to check if they were behind me. I ducked into a janitor's closet, locked the door, pulled out my phone and recorded a video, thinking if something happened, at least there'd be evidence. The camera worked for 2 seconds, then the screen went black. Phone powered down. I hadn't even touched the button. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no emergency dial. I heard footsteps outside, perfectly even, like they weren't walking on tiled floor but something else entirely. Then a knock. Not hard, just rhythmic. 3 soft taps. "Mr. Lane," came the voice again, but this time through the door, even though it was a solid metal slab. You cannot hide from adjustment. The phrase hit me like ice water. Adjustment? Like they'd done it before? Like I wasn't the first? Then they were gone. Just like that. No footsteps. Retreating. No sound. I waited a full 15 minutes before creeping out. Back in the terminal, people were going about their day like nothing had happened. No sign of the men, but something was different. The lights above the gate I'd been waiting at were off. Not flickering, just off. Like the circuit had died for that part of the terminal. The rest of the place was fine. My gate changed. Flight delayed again. The gate agent smiled at me with a robotic chill. "Don't worry," she said. "They'll get to you eventually." That's when I left. Didn't board, didn't fly. I walked out of the terminal, rented a car, and drove straight out of Nevada. And I've been looking over my shoulder ever since. I've moved 3 times in 5 years. I cover my laptop camera with tape. My phone randomly powers off. Street lights blink when I walk under them. My dreams still come once a week. And sometimes, just sometimes, I'll hear a knock at my apartment door. 3 taps, always slow, always soft. I never answer. Story number 6. The Child Witness. My son has always been sensitive, smart, curious, empathetic to a fault, but also prone to night terrors. So when he woke me up one night screaming about the bright people in the trees, I assumed it was just another nightmare, but I was wrong. It started in the fall. We live on the edge of a forest near Hoodlit River, tucked in a quiet neighbourhood with a view of Mount Hood in the distance. My son, Jacob, is 7. He loves stargazing. Every night before bed, we'd go out onto the porch with his little telescope and look at the constellations. It became our thing. Then one night in early October, Jacob pointed to something in the sky and asked, "Is that a star, or is it watching me?" I looked. It wasn't a star. It was hovering, bright white, too close, then it darted sideways, unnaturally fast, and blinked out. I tried to laugh it off. Must have been a drone, but I knew it wasn't. Jacob didn't sleep that night. He kept drawing pictures of thin people with big heads and glowing eyes. He said they were outside the window. They smiled, but not with their mouths, he whispered. They smile in your head. A few days later, I found him in the backyard in the middle of the night, barefoot and staring at the woods. When I touched his shoulder, he didn't react. His eyes were glassy. He finally blinked and whispered, "They said I won't remember next time." I brought him to a child psychologist. She said it was just night terrors, stress and imagination. He'll grow out of it. But then I checked the baby monitor footage from that night. I always keep one on him, just in case. At 2:41 a.m, he sat up suddenly in bed, wide awake. Then the screen flickered, just for a second, and when it came back, the bed was empty, for over 3 minutes. Then he was back, sitting exactly where he'd been, breathing hard. I took the footage to the psychologist. She said I'd edited it, that I was projecting paranoia onto my son. I knew then we were alone in this. 2 nights later I woke up to the sound of someone knocking. 3 slow, deliberate taps. It wasn't the front door. It was Jacob's window. I rushed in. He was still asleep, but his nose was bleeding, and there were footprints in the frost on the grass outside, bare, human-like, but with only 4 toes. I called the police. They found nothing. No prints, no sign of entry, no strangers in the area. And then they showed up. The next morning, a black car parked in front of the house. 2 people got out, a man and a woman, both tall, dressed in sleek black suits that looked strangely outdated, like something from a 1960s spy film. I watched them through the blinds. They didn't knock, just stood there side by side, perfectly still. Their faces were blank, not just expressionless, emotionless. The woman's head tilted slightly, like a bird studying its prey. Then they got back in the car and drove away. No plates. That night Jacob came to my bed crying. "They want me to go with them," he whispered. "They said I'm a key." I held him all night. The next day his drawings changed. No more aliens, just people in black suits with empty oval faces. He drew a picture of me asleep, with one of them standing at the foot of my bed. I bought blackout curtains, stopped letting him sleep alone, and disconnected the Wi-Fi. I left my job. I became obsessed with keeping him safe. I started logging everything: time, weather, his mood, dreams, drawings, sleepwalking episodes. Then, one morning, all my notes were gone. The binder, the USB backups, the notebook under my bed, gone. And there was a sticky note on my fridge that read, "Good mothers forget." I broke down. I nearly took him and ran, but I knew they'd follow. That night, Jacob whispered something that haunts me still. "They said if I keep remembering, they'll take you instead." I didn't cry in front of him. I just said, "It's okay, sweetheart. We're not going to let them win." And we haven't. Not yet. I homeschool him now. We moved across the state. I keep cameras up, but I don't check them unless something feels off. I don't keep written records anymore. Just memories. Just instinct. Some nights he still wakes up and asks, "Are they there?" And I lie. I say no. But sometimes I hear the knocking. 3 slow taps on the window, and I stay in bed, holding him close, praying that whatever they are, they don't want him back. That's all for this evening. Sweet dreams.